Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Grateful Redhead podcast. I'm Angie Ringler, your host, and today I'm sharing a personal journey that I've had, and I invited a guest on that helped me during that journey. So back in October of 2020, I experienced a multitude of bites. I called them spider bites because I didn't know any different. They were all over the back of my legs. I experienced them on my belly area. I even got one as big as the size of like a $50 on my boob. It was terrible and scary and frightening. And honestly, I didn't know what to do except for go to the dermatologist. That's the only thing I knew to do. I thought they were bites and maybe that they could help me. So I went to the dermatologist and she quickly gave me 2 weeks worth of antibiotics, which I took because I was desperate to figure out why this was happening. And more so, I wanted it to go away. The bump, especially on my boob, was very painful. So about the 2-week period on my last day of antibiotic, I got another huge bump on my other boob. And I called up the dermatologist right away and I was like, something's not right. And they got me in right away. And again, they were like, we don't know what it is. We don't know whether it's an actual bite or whether it's an infection. So we'll just give you another 2 weeks of antibiotics. Fortunately, I was speaking to a friend of mine, and she recommended that I go and talk to an Eastern medicine doctor who is right here in my own town. And I was willing to do it. I mean, nobody else was giving me any good advice. So I called up the office, made an appointment. I got right in to see Dr. Saterra Vishnu. And I can't tell you the amazing difference that I had. But more importantly, I went there because I had these weird bites on my body. When I went and talked to Dr. Vishnu, he asked me a bunch of questions. It was like nothing that I had experienced in my normal doctor visits where normally they would just, barely even introduce themselves. So he asked me a bunch of questions about my life, how I was living my life, what was happening. And in the midst of that conversation, I shared something about when my dad had a stroke in front of me at the dining room table many years ago. Obviously, a traumatic experience. My dad did not live. And it seems as though my body, like what a lot of us experience when we have trauma, is that life goes on and we just have to keep living. So we just find a way to push it down and not really deal with it. But I'm happy to say that through that conversation, he said to me, Dr. Vishnu said to me, I think that you have shock, and that I have a homeopathic remedy that I think will be very beneficial to you. Now, being a person who lives a very organic, natural lifestyle, I felt like I knew what the word homeopathic meant. I thought that I understood what that really was. Really, that's why I am having him on my show today, because I had no idea really what homeopathics and the power of homeopathics was. So the gist of it was I got this treatment, and the very next day, I felt amazingly better. I felt like some weight or something had been lifted off of me. Now, I'm sure a lot of you could probably, anxiety, nervousness, you might be experiencing it yourself. And you're probably, if you don't have it yourself, that's great, but you probably know somebody who does. And I must say, over the past few years, I had been experiencing anxiety and nervousness, and I didn't know why. I didn't have it as a child. I didn't have it in my early 20s or anything. So why it was happening, I was really unsure, but that's the feeling that I finally got relief from. I wasn't living every day in this fear of this nervousness or this fear of a panic attack where it was literally taking over my whole body. My body was vibrating and it could last for as long as 30 to 40 minutes. It was debilitating. And the more that I worried about it happening, the more I got worried about it happening. So I experienced great relief from my time with Dr. Vishnu, and I felt it so important that I asked him to be on my show, and he graciously agreed. And I want him to share with us, because really I'm still in my learning phase, I want him to share with us the power of homeopathy and be able to maybe share with something that you might learn that could help you to live life with less stress, less anxiety, less pain, more happiness, more joy, whatever it is, because it could be out there in the form of some sort of natural remedy. So, without further ado, I would like Dr. Vishnu to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about, what it is that you do and how you got to this point.
Ooh, thank you, Angie. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you.
It's a journey. Life is a journey. My journey is no different than anybody else's. I think that when I look back at my 35 plus years in doing this medicine, traditional Chinese medicine is the base of what I do. But it goes all the way back to my martial arts experience in high school. Um, Realizing that you can take and use your hand to break boards, and move your chi or your energy and supersede the limits of the physical body. If I can break 5 boards with my palm of my hand without breaking a bone, that has a lot to be said about your ability to project or move beyond the biochemical and the physical. And so that's kind of what got me into the field of healing, on top of the fact that my mother was in the healing field as the first laboratory technician for United Airlines. When they set up their medical department, she cured herself of lymphoma and leukemia utilizing herbs, homeopathic remedies, nutrition. And,
Wow.
it stimulated me to do something. And so instead of embracing my family business over time, which I did initially, um, over the years of martial arts, and realizing that all the guys I went and did martial arts with were all going to medical school or law school. And one of the guys came down to Miami. This was in the probably late 70s and mid 70s, and took a weekend course in acupuncture. And came back, put a needle in my leg, and I thought, wow, this is outrageous. How does this happen? Changed my life. And then, of course, I was looking at what they were doing, going to medical school and burning out with that, ultimate boot camp type of break yourself down, make you go through hoops and spins and turns and all the different things you have to do in order to get that degree and that license, the golden ticket, suppose, as I look at it back now, to prescribe drugs. And I thought, well, I could do that, but that's not what makes sense, because if I can project my energy and put it through, 5 boards without breaking a bone, and martial arts and oriental medicine has been walking hand in hand for 2,000 years, I'm going to embrace that. So that's kind of how my journey started. And then I got involved with a physician who was in his residency program outside of one of the hospitals of Detroit. We became friends, and he was focused in on homeopathy and another thing called anthroposophical medicine, which really boils down to Rudolf Steiner and Waldorf education and a whole spiritual side to medicine, which came from Austria in the late 1800s, based on Steiner being a prophet and having a connection to the universal source of knowledge. And so we got together. We set up a practice. I started a bioenergetic clinic with a physician who graduated from University of Michigan, was in the liver transplant program there, that walked out of that program due to his wife being cured of chronic bowel problems with herbs and colonic irrigations. After all the Western medicine, and nothing worked. And so he just, did one of these and said goodbye to University of Michigan.
See ya.
Myself and a clinical psychologist and Jim Noonschwander set up the Bioenergy Medical Center to help people detox and come into the bioenergetic understanding of the body, which really rolls into what homeopathy is about, in terms of something that was created in the 1850s by Samuel Hahnemann in Germany, a physician that postulated that you could take a natural substance over time in a highly diluted state to stimulate the body to heal itself without negative side effects like drugs do. And every drug has a negative side effect. So he took cinchona bark, which was the remedy that they were giving for malaria, quinine, which is made out of the bark of the cinchona tree, and started taking it himself. And over a period of 6 months to a year, started developing malarial symptoms. Never stepped out of Germany in his life. No possibility for him to get malarial symptoms by taking by not being by being housed in Germany. But the only difference being is taking the gross substance of the cinchona bark, which developed these sets of symptoms. So he diluted that bark and succussed it into a medium like water, and that resolved the symptoms. So his whole idea was that you could take a natural substance, whether it's plant, animal, or disease part, mineral, and dilute it and succuss it, shake it up. And if the set of symptoms copy what's going on with the body, utilize that to heal the body. And so that's the basis of homeopathy. And that's kind of how I got involved in working with Oriental medicine, working with homeopathy, doing all the other theories and practices I do in my clinic here to help people move through either physical, emotional, psychospiritual trauma to bring them completely back to the present.
So, how do you figure out what natural remedies or what homeopathic remedies might work for somebody?
Well, there's a couple of different approaches to that. The historical thing that I've done that seems to work the best is that we try to get out the noise first. The noise being intolerance. In someone's case, they might be allergic to sugar. They may be allergic to caffeine. They could be allergic to protein. And so because I do work with allergy elimination, I bring that to bear first and foremost, because most often than not, if you've got a chronic issue, you've got an allergy to something, and it's causing a stress. That stress could be emotional, it could be psychospiritual, could be physical, it could be biochemical. So my approach, and it doesn't have to be always, but it's pretty predominant in how I work with people, is to determine, yes, is there an intolerance to something that you crave? It's the 11th commandment, as I coined it. You're allergic to everything you crave. So if we have to deal with that first. If we can get that out of the way, then I believe it clears the playing field through conversation, through the art of listening, which you can't do in the Western medical model because the average visit's 7 minutes.
Right.
And
They
you're
don't
not
allow
going to
for
learn
enough
much in 7
time for
minutes.
even the doctor doesn't even ask me, what do I eat? They don't never even ask me what's my diet like or what's my physical activity levels or anything. So I did enjoy the fact that you
Well,
asked a
everybody's
lot of
put in a box,
questions. What's that?
Yes. Well, that's because we're not all in the same box. And homeopathy always, as well as Chinese medicine, always embraces the individual qualities. I mean, there's a whole system of um, Chinese medicine that deals with the year you were born, the day you were born, what astrological Chinese sign you were born under, and how that impacts what points are open and closed at different times of the day, year, month, to provide you with the best level of healing. And same thing with homeopathy. I mean, you can be a classic sulfur constitution where you're kind of a pack rat. You're always and you not only you kind of hide or you collect things, and you're a procrastinator. You just can't get it together to be on time to do the things you do. Or you can have maybe like a calcarb constitution where you're wet and clammy and flabby. You just walk around, your feet are wet, your hands sweat, you've got issues with calcium and how that metabolizes in the body, but that evokes a particular constitutional type. You could be a nux vomica type, who is all about excess, too much sex, too much food, too much work, too much alcohol. So it's never about chilling out. Or the arsenicum, who's the perfectionist, who before they die, they will get up, take and move that picture on the wall so it isn't crooked, and then they'll be fine.
So there's all these different types, right? And you're
Yes.
saying that if we find the balance between that type or whatever we're experiencing, that there is some equal in homeopathy to help balance that out?
Yeah, it's finding what the profile looks like, and that does change, obviously. And the question, what George Vithoulkas is one of the leading homeopaths of the world today, and he's Greek, and he wrote a book called Homeopathy in the 21st Century, and this was done, I think, in the 90s. But he talks about an envelope. I mean, we have this outer core, this physical outer core, and inside of that core comes emotions our known emotions, but inside that core is our mental or our subconscious. So what really drives the whole engine of our totality and our being is really the subconscious. So it's like when we were talking through our conversation, I got that aha moment where I realized that you were still dealing with a trauma that happened some years ago related to your father,
Right.
and because that drove the machine, at least at this moment. That's where I came back to that one particular remedy, which was aconite, which deals with sudden onset issues that come on suddenly, like one minute you're fine, the next minute you're down in the dirt, so
Yeah, and I
that,
feel like
that
because I was living life every day, right? I was going through the motions of life and thinking, well, this is years behind me. This is not something that's, certainly affecting me anymore. I must be over it. Like, I think I've always thought like time is the healer, but time is also a great way to avoid that stuff or ever dealing with it, I feel like. And I feel like my body was finally getting to that boiling over point, right? It just couldn't keep pushing the stuff down. So it started coming
yeah,
out in
yeah,
the
and I
form
mean,
of the rashes, of the
yes.
bites, or something like that.
Hmm.
And do you find that
Yeah,
a
it's the
lot of
vital
people have
force,
that?
we and Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, with more so with chronic issues that are unresolved. I mean, we of course have acute issues when you get a contusion or a bruise or you overwork some area. Arnica is the best homeopathic remedy for that because it resolves inflammation and bruising. So that's pretty physical in nature. That's that outside envelope that it's dealing with. But it's so interesting because I remember a specific case of a woman who uh, ended up getting type 2 diabetes after getting kicked by a horse in her pancreas. And I mean, she was all fine, but she was doing something with her horse, and her hub just kicked her and hit her, down in the left lower quadrant of her body where the pancreas is. And within weeks, she developed uncontrollable diabetes. And but listening to that story and realizing how it evolved gave her a high dose of arnica, and that all went away. Because it came from a trauma.
It's
You know,
amazing.
yeah. I mean, it's really an art and a science because and the beautiful part about it is when Samuel Hahnemann, after 40 years developing this system of medicine, which really was fully embraced here in the United States in the 1800s up until 1910, when the Rockefeller brothers hired the Flexner brothers to go around the country over 5 years and to check out the medical schools and what was going on, then really bring the report and basically demonize homeopathy and bring in Western pharmaceutical petrochemical medicine. Did it really change? Because even to this, there were 26 homeopathic medical schools in the 1800s in this country, one of the two largest repositories of journals, texts, and historical information are at the University of Michigan Taubman Library, the medical library at University of Michigan, and University of Pennsylvania, the Hahnemann Library there. Because, I mean, so many things, even the 1918 flu pandemic, where that's the true pandemic, not this fake plandemic that we're in right now, but there were 50 million people died in this pandemic in 1918 flu. And yet of the percentage of people that died that got it, uh, only 0.01% of people who did homeopathic therapeutics with that disease or that pandemic passed away. I mean, nobody died that did homeopathic therapy. They died by taking Bayer aspirin because that facilitated and made them die in 24 hours. Masks didn't work. They don't work today, and they never have. So, those are the kinds of historical accounts that are factual, that deal with a kind of mass issue that happened that was way more prevalent than this scam that we've got going today. I'm
Yeah, I
sorry to
feel
say,
like
but
that's
that's the
why it's
reality of it, you
important
know?
for people to know about homeopathy as not just the arnica rub, like you go to the health food store and um, I feel
Sure.
like it's
Yeah,
so important.
totally.
And once you gave me that aconite and the next day I could feel so much better. I found it really interesting that I went to you for these bites, but yet here I was finding relief for something that was happening to me and I didn't even know why. The nervousness or the anxiety. I didn't even know why those were showing up in my life because we're not really thought to think about those kind of things, about how these traumas or these moments in our life can connect to that kind of innerness that's happening in our body. Um, at your recommendation, I did join the Lake County homeopathy group. I haven't attended one
Homeopathic
of their
Society,
meetings.
yeah, or
What's it called?
oh, good.
What's it called
Well,
again?
Lake County Homeopathic Society or Lake County Homeopathic Society, I believe it is, or um, yeah, it's
So
through the NCH, National Center for Homeopathy.
I did join them and I thought it would be a great way. They're all online now with their meetings. So I thought it'd be a great way to kind of plug in. But the last two meetings they had, unfortunately, haven't been on a night that I've been able to plug in. But there is a wealth of information out there that I'm so glad that you had enlightened me to, which involves some reading. One thing that you shared that I thought was really interesting was eating for the seasons. And I feel like our access to food, the way that we have access to most of us have an unlimited access to food. We can drive to a grocery store within a reasonable area and pick up pretty much all the food that we want all year round. And there doesn't feel like a big seasonality when I shop at the store. But you had talked about eating for the seasons, which I have found very helpful. I, for the longest time, had very cold hands and feet. I didn't know why. Honestly, I thought it was because I was getting older, and that's just what happens when you age. But you had recommended for me, and again, if you're listening to this chat today that we're having, everybody's individual, like you said. So what worked for me might not work for other people, but I feel compelled to share that just roasting some vegetables and getting kind of the moisture out of the things that I'm eating, little tricks like that you have shared with me have proven to be beneficial. I'm finding that my hands and feet are not as cold. Now, was I cured because I roasted a sweet potato? No, but I feel a lot better and I'm learning how to practice these kind of things that will put my body more in alignment with nature and the seasons and all that's happening around me. I feel like that there is ways for us to look. Not everybody can come to your office, but they certainly should if they're within a reasonable distance for you. I'm assuming that what you do can only be done hands on, or is this something that you're able to help people like through what we're doing right now through video call?
Well, that's a whole nother conversation because that's what over the last 5 to 8 years, that's what I've been dealing with and working with is for people to develop a whole system of self care that they can do by themselves in their privacy and comfortability of their own home. There's a lot that needs to happen when you're face to face with somebody. Zoom is pretty impersonal, or whatever you want to call it. When we're doing this, there's obviously value with an individual when you can feel their pulse, look at their tongue, palpate their abdomen, or the things that will reveal in real time what's going on with them. But there's definitely a lot you can do. And I mean, I go back to even the historical eating habits of the Japanese in macrobiotics. George Asawa, Mitsukushi, a couple of people that really brought to the West how to eat in harmony with the seasons and why it's important, and why that it speaks to a significant level of longevity and balance that I don't think we get here. As a matter of fact, just on an aside to that, with the whole idea of geoengineering and what the insults we're being hit with genetically modified foods and and geoengineering or chemtrails that are being sprayed upon us, and the high amounts of aluminum, strontium, and barium that we're being hit with. And what that's doing to impact the nature of and the state of our health, especially as we get older, because there's huge amounts of either Alzheimer's or dementia, and that's not happening for no reason. It's happening because people are being packed in with heavy metals, aluminum specifically. In fact, Dietrich Klinghardt, who's a really excellent, he was voted maybe 5 years ago, 8 years ago, the number one physician in the world in integrative medicine. He's a PhD MD out of Seattle, and also has a clinic in Germany. And he's the leading expert on autism around the world. He's a great guy. He's funny as hell, and he's totally brilliant. He doesn't take himself too seriously, but he's well-rounded in his approach, and he understands. And I mean, he embraces a lot of historically poignant factors like Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, the yogic medicine that's historic from India, and why these understandings are really poignant and important today in terms of total healing. Because there's 5 levels of healing. And until we really embrace these 5 levels of healing, we're not going to get down to the source and get the cure that we need, because God forbid, if we're not doing Western medicine, there's no cure. But they never talk a cure. They only talk treatment. And I'm more interested in curing, or at least placing in balance to the best of our ability what we have based on the tools that we're willing to take in, number one, and to express and utilize on a daily basis for ourselves. I mean, it's just like Hahnemann, after his 40 years of working with this incredible medicine that he developed, at the the last 10 years of his life, he realized there was a whole aspect of healing that he hadn't touched on yet, called the miasms. And that is your historical or genetic heritage and what you get from your ancestors, which can go back 9 generations. And his initial 4 miasms, as they called it, he dealt with psoriasis, tuberculosis, gonorrhea, syphilis, these issues that will manifest in subsequent generations, but come to you as specific weaknesses, maybe metabolic problems, maybe inability to have mental problems, to have mental issues, to have issues like inappropriate growths, like polyps or tumors or so on. And so, how those things are impacted based on not your life and your decisions now, but what you came in with based on your ancestors' sins, sins of the father, so to speak, And that's how he was working with people that hadn't gotten any results from his approach without taking that into consideration until his last 10 years. So really powerful stuff. I mean,
It's
they say
fascinating. Yeah.
Organon of Medicine is one of the most important books of the 20th century outside of the Bible. One of the 3 most important books of the 20th century,
It's
because it's
fascinating, and I feel like we should
healing.
learn that years ago. Like, where has it been? It's been around for so long, but yet I feel like it's this hidden secret in a way that we're not really exposed to the power of, number one, what's happened to us so long ago that's coming forward and that affects our life. And we think that it's just the way that we're living today, or it's a result of the way that we think, or something that we ate, or not exercising. I mean, all those things definitely play a key role in how we feel and what we're like today. But, just what you said about, we're bringing stuff all the way back from our ancestors. Like, how are we supposed to deal with that if we don't even know that that's a thing?
Well, we don't know that because they take it out of the school system. They don't even teach you the human body. They won't even teach you reproductive therapy. They want to teach you transgenderism right now. Which I find offensive, in terms of let's talk about healing. Let's talk about how many people can tell you where the spleen is, or what the pancreas does, or where your gallbladder or your appendix is in your human body and what that's for. There's total ignorance there. And I blame the school system. Well, I don't even blame the school systems. I blame the corporations, because they manipulated and have been selling the school systems to create worker bees instead of free thinking, independently thinking individuals. And that's
Yeah.
the travesty of our educational system, unfortunately.
We're
at the
definitely
moment, even though
limited
it's
in
another
so much.
subject.
I mean, I get it that there's only so many hours in the day and that, everything can't be taught by a teacher. I believe that. But at the same time, we're very limited and it's very funneled into the things that we learn in our time in school. So I feel like, I guess that's why it's even more powerful that when we learn something like this, we have to tell other people. It becomes our job to share with the person next to us the power of what can be, right? So when I got this amazing benefit, two people who I know that are experiencing trauma in their life, I they were like my first phone call. Like, I felt so much better that I
Mm.
wanted everybody to be able to let go of that stress or that anxiety or that trauma if there was a way. We all deserve to live, feeling the best that we can, but first we have to know that there's tools out there for us to be able to do that. So, what's your recommendation, like,
Oh, absolutely.
what's your recommendation for people to, either learn more or plug in to getting this for themselves, getting homeopathy in their life?
Well, you said it right off the get go. You said you joined the National Center for Homeopathy, or at least checked it out. They have a local chapter here in Lake County. That's a wonderful. That is a great source of knowledge because the National Center for Homeopathy has been around for I think 115 years. They are nationwide. They're in every county, city, municipal area in the country. They have a national conference that's going up. All you got to do is go to nch.org, I believe it is, and just check out what they're doing. They have incredible lectures that talk about everything from cell salts to first aid remedies to remedies for kids, on and on and on. And the leading homeopaths around the country embrace that, and that's what we have to keep alive because it's the public, it's the American people that have maintained homeopathy since its onset. And regardless of what the professional arm has done or been attempting to redirect through pharmaceutical medicine, the homeopathy has always been there. And it's been there because it has been embraced by local populations and people because it works and it's simple. And that's how you get involved is pick up a book. In fact, Shayla's second cousin is Dana Allman, who wrote the book Everybody's Guide to Homeopathy and was one of the first people to be arrested in California for practicing, quote, medicine without a license. In fact, there was no license for homeopathy when he was a homeopath in California back then. And so it was kind of a joke. But Dana's a very well read guy, he knows his stuff. And, it's just how we continue to fight back to keep our medicine, our ability to treat ourselves, in our hands without a toxic side effect. And again, it's the cut, burn, and poison approach, Western medical approach, allopathic approach, which really hasn't changed since the 1500s. You want to cut somebody, bleed them out, bloodletting, do leeches, cauterize them, give them mercury toxic substance to suppress the symptom, make it go away like you've done something good, not withstanding the fact that there's always that negative back side effect that's going to affect you. The beautiful, again, I reaffirm this and regurgitate it constantly, is the fact that homeopathy stimulates the body to heal itself. One of the major tenets in homeopathy is like cures like. So, given Arnica montana or mountain daisy in a gross form, it will create soreness and trauma-like symptoms. But when you take it, if you have a contusion or a bruise or what they call a hematoma, it'll resolve that in its homeopathic form. So that's the nature of how it works. So again, it's a lifelong pursuit. It is not for the faint at heart in terms of, if you don't like reading, don't check it out. I mean, but the beautiful part about it is when you read the cases, you understand how someone simply could be cured of type 2 diabetes because they got hit by a horse in their pancreas and that trauma shut the pancreas off. You give something for the trauma, pancreas starts up again.
Yeah,
And
letting the
it's not
body
about
heal
giving.
itself.
Right, absolutely. And so
Yeah.
that goes on and on with all kinds of, even some people that deal. I'm, a beautiful case in Michigan. Before we came down here in the late '90s, was a woman that came to my office. Must have been 2 degrees out, middle of the winter. She shows up with a windbreaker on. It is like, what are you doing with this wind? It's 2 degrees out, Oh, I'm hot all the time. I thought, wow, so the conversation went to that, how she was just running hot all the time. Well, it seems as if somebody in her family had tuberculosis, her dad or mother, and I gave her one dose, not too dissimilar to what you had, but it was tuberculinum. It was that nosode of tuberculosis. Within 24 hours, she came in with a fur coat,
Wow.
totally changed the temperature.
I feel
You know,
like that, you probably have 100 stories like that, and the power of the story is exactly that. It's powerful, and I feel like I couldn't tell people you should try homeopathy, even if I knew, if I read about it or something. But the fact that I can share my personal story and know from all my being that I feel amazingly better due to taking that. So I want to thank you
yeah.
really for taking the time and being, joining me today and being able to enlighten me a little bit more on homeopathy, being able to share. I'm hoping that somebody's listening today that is feeling bad, awkward, sad, having pain or something that they might be now be able to get some relief from. And they deserve it. So let people know where they can. So if they have questions, you're in Lake County, Florida,
Yes,
in Mount
sure.
Dora. So anybody listening that's in the nearby area, they can certainly make an appointment and come see you. But are you available for like a phone teleconference if somebody wants to learn a little bit more or see if there's something that you can help them with?
Anybody that's listening, yeah, I'm happy to provide a free 15-minute consultation and give them some answers if they've got questions. You can call us at 352-729-4361. That's the office phone. Or you can go to a3acupuncture.com. That's our website. There's a lot of information on the website that'll help you with. Uh, it's real easy to get a hold of us. We're happy to help. Look, I'm here to serve. I've been blessed in multiple ways by having the opportunity and being crazy enough to try to figure this out, at least to some extent in my life. Because hey, I'm not the expert, as I tell everybody. In fact, especially my students, I said, look, the expert's in front of you. If you got to keep quiet long enough to realize that, then you'll get somewhere. If you want to, spout out your intelligence and let everybody know what you know, you'll never get anywhere. So just, be quiet, listen, and let them tell you what's going on because the answers are already there.
Yeah, and part of that is just listening to ourself and be open to hearing what our body is trying to say. I never thought that what I was having was because my dad had a major stroke in front of me. Like I never connected those two dots. But I should have at some point said, I wonder what that trauma or that experience could lead to in my life, but it's not something we talk about when it happens. So I'm grateful that Amber had referred me to you. More so, I'm grateful that I made the time for myself. A lot of us push self care aside and we just get busy and we, think we'll deal with that later. But so I'm grateful that has happened. And again, can you just tell everybody your website?
Yeah, the website is a3acupuncture.com, American Academy of American Acupuncture Academy .com, or we just say A3. It's simple, a3acupuncture.com. And it's 352-729-4361. We're here on the south side of Mount Dora. And it's right next to a golf course. It's very quiet and peaceful here. We don't like to cause more trauma. We do our best to keep people out of trauma and come into a healing, comfortable, safe, and easy environment.
Yes, we're very lucky in the area that we live in here in Central Florida. It is quite beautiful. So I just want to take, a minute and say thank you
Absolutely.
so much, for Saterra for being on the show and being able to share with everybody what you know. And I encourage anybody to just plug in, learn more about homeopathy, give his office a call if that's what you feel is right for you. But more importantly, if you enjoyed what you heard today and you want to, if you know somebody maybe in your life that you want me to talk to and interview on this style, I would love to get a chance to talk to them. There's amazing people out there doing exactly what Dr. Vishnu is doing and sharing their knowledge and their passion for how we can all live a better life. So take time, reach out to them, ask me, I'll give them a call, get them on the show. And if you like what you're hearing today, then go ahead and subscribe to the Grateful Redhead podcast. And until we meet again, please be kind to each other and love one another. Peace out.